Chapter 8, Energy Balance and Body Composition, Part 2. Table 8.2, Factors that Affect the BMR. The chart discusses the factors and effects of basal metabolic rate, also known as BMR. Age is a factor that affects BMR. Lean body mass diminishes with age, which will slow the BMR. This is not always a given if a person has a higher amount of lean body mass by continuing to exercise doing weight-bearing activities, which will maintain and/or increase lean body mass. Height is a factor that will affect BMR. In tall, thin people, the BMR is higher. Growth is a factor that will affect the BMR. Children, adolescents, and pregnant women have a higher BMR. We will discuss the additional nutrient needs of these groups in other chapters. Body composition and gender are factors that can affect BMR. The more lean tissue, the higher the BMR, which is why males usually have a higher BMR than females. The more fat tissue, the lower the BMR. Fever is a factor that will affect BMR. A fever will rise the BMR, generally causing a need for additional calories. Stresses will affect the BMR. Stresses include many diseases and some drugs, which may rise the BMR. Environmental temperature will affect the BMR. Both heat and cold rise the BMR. Fasting, starvation are factors that affect the BMR. Fasting and starvation lowers the BMR. Malnutrition affects the BMR. Malnutrition generally lowers the BMR. However, if multiple disease processes are present, the BMR may be elevated. Hormones will affect the BMR. The thyroid hormone, thyroxine, for example, can speed up or slow down the BMR. Premenstrual hormones slightly raise the BMR. Factors that affect the BMR. Smoking is a factor that affects the BMR. Nicotine increases energy expenditure. Smoking is not recommended due to other significant health risks. Caffeine is a factor that affects the BMR. Caffeine increases energy expenditure. Sleep is a factor that will affect the BMR. The BMR is lowest when sleeping. The BMR begins to decrease in early adulthood after growth and development cease at a rate of about 2% a decade. A reduction in voluntary activity as well brings the total decline in energy expenditure to about 5% a decade. If two people weigh the same, the taller, thinner person will have the faster metabolic rate, reflecting the greater skin surface through which heat is lost by radiation. In proportion to the body's volume, see Figure 8-5, page 239. Fever raises the BMR by 7% for each degree Fahrenheit. Prolonged starvation reduces the amount of metabolically active lean tissue in the body. Although the decline occurs sooner and to a greater extent than body losses alone can explain, more likely the neural and hormonal changes that accompany fasting are responsible for changes in the BMR. The thyroid gland releases hormones that travel to the cells and influence cellular metabolism. Thyroid hormone activity can speed up or slow down the rate of metabolism by as much as 50%. Energy in, slide 1 of 2. Thermogenesis is the generation of heat. It can determine energy expenditure. 2/3 of energy expended is through basal metabolism to keep the body functioning. Example, breathing. The rate at which the body expends the energy to keep the body functioning is the basal metabolic rate, also known as BMR. The rate varies from person to person and may differ from the same person with a change in circumstances or physical condition. The rate is the slowest when a person is sleeping undisturbed, but usually measured in a room with a comfortable temperature when the person is awake but lying still after a restful sleep and an overnight 12 to 14 hour fast. Resting metabolic rate, or RMR, is slightly higher than the BMR because the criteria for recent food intake and physical activity are not as strict. When energy needs cannot be measured, equations can provide reasonably accurate estimates. Estimating energy expended on basal metabolism. The equation that is listed here is for men, and there are two equations. One equation has BMR estimates slightly less than 1 calorie per minute, in parentheses 1.1 to 1.3 kcals per minute, parentheses, or 24 kcals per kilogram per day. BMR equation listed below: 10 times weight in kilograms plus 6.25 times height in centimeters minus 5 times age in years plus 5 equals your basal metabolic rate for men. Estimating energy expended on basal metabolism, women. BMR estimates slightly less than 1 kcal per minute, 0.8 to 1.0 kcals a minute, or 23 kcals per kilogram per day. BMR equation: 10 times weight in kilograms plus 6.25 times height in centimeters minus 5 times age in years minus 161 will provide the BMR for women.